I'm Ursula Clark. I live in Vinegar Hill, where was the conception of BWAC. We had a few artists in the neighborhood, and we decided we would have a show of open studios. And somehow this gentleman named Willentis, who owned a lot of property, which is now Dumbo, but was very vacant, invited us to occupy 2 floors at 68 J Street in Dumbo. So we said, yeah, sure. So we were there for a couple of years having shows. We also did 12 years of outdoor sculpture show in the Brooklyn Bridge Park before the carousel. And then we were invited to go to Red Hook, and we said sure. So we came out to Red Hook, and that's history.
Hello, my name is Anika Archip. I've been a member of BWAC from 1994 to 1999, and in 1998, along with Wayne Dobson, we were both co-presidents of the organization. During my year as president, which hardly anyone knows, and it's really a story that Greg O'Connell and I were involved with. And of course, Greg O'Connell, who's our great benefactor, and allowed us to use this wonderful, beautiful, historic space for artists to exhibit their work for many years now. We're also grateful to him for that. And we were setting up for the big show, which was in May. It was always in May, just around Mother's Day. The night before, there was a huge storm, a really, really strong storm, not hurricane, but it was a really strong storm. And of course, anyone who knows Red Hook floods very easily. And during that time as well, in the 90s, the space was not as fit as it was now. There were holes in the ceilings that we would just cover with plastic garbage bags. So that was the situation then. So we're about to open, night before there's a storm. I'm president. I run over early in the morning to start surveying the property and looking at any damaged artwork. And other members were here inside, and I was outside because we had this space and a whole section beyond. And I go down to the end of, there's a walkway on the pier that faces the Statue of Liberty. At the end of that walkway was a sculpture by artist Vincent Bambini, who was always did a lot of work with lightning bolts. He had a huge metal sculpture piece at the end of the walkway that fell into the water. I saw all of a sudden this lightning bolt sticking out of the water. And then I see Greg O'Connell also surveying. He has a boat, and Greg's always wearing his overalls and a boat with an outrigger. And we both look in shock. The hours to the event opening, and he said, "I have the boat." He goes, "But somebody has to, go in, and we can, I'll give you the rope and hook it in." And by the way, I don't swim, but I didn't even think twice. I disrobed down to my underwear, jumped in the water. Greg pulled the boat in, gave me the rope. I tied it around. We hauled it in, put it in place. A couple hours later, event opened. Nobody was the wiser. And that's my story.
By the way, my name is Charles Edward Hayward Johnson, and I reside in Manhattan. But I love coming to Brooklyn. BWAC is a great organization. I started, knowing about it back in, the 1990s. And then I've been in a couple of shows, maybe 5 or 6, maybe 7. I can't remember the years. I think the last time I showed was just before Sandy happened. It's been great coming back because it feels like a high school reunion. And you made it free for people that have showed here before, which I think is fantastic. And it's almost like seeing people that you haven't seen in like 10 years or 15 years. It's been unique. I remember when we first started out, I didn't come as early as you started, but remember the early days when the owner would participate in the openings, you know, and just be here with the bands playing and everything else. And you've got some great people that I get to see again that I haven't seen in a long time, and now they're coming along. So it's great. I'm looking forward to the opening. I hope you guys sell a lot of artwork, and I hope that you be a beacon for Brooklyn, which I think you already are.
I'm Jan Hogenbohm. I was a member from 1995 to 2004. I was a very active member, and I remember this space very fondly. I first showed in Pier Show 3, and then in Pier Show 4, I was in the Sculpture Barn the very next year. And I continued being in every Pier Show for the whole 10 years I was a member. I worked on publicity for BWAC, and I curated the sculpture show at Empire Fulton Ferry State Park, as it was called back then, in 1997. It was a very big group, but there was only about 20 or so of us who would show up at these meetings, and we threshed out everything. We discussed everything. It was very, very democratic in a very grassroots way. It was a wonderful, wonderful, inspiring time. I was always amazed at the Pier Show. Every year I would be in my studio by myself thinking I was so brilliant and original, and then at the Pier Show realized that there's a lot of other brilliant original artists in Brooklyn. A wonderful professional show we set up for ourselves.
Hi, my name is Kathleen Collins, and I've been a BWAC member since 1990. Funny story about how it used to be. We didn't have the second floor at that point. We had just the downstairs. And nobody had thought of making appointments for hanging. So if we were working, we'd get over there about 8 o'clock, and you'd hear all the grumbling and noise outside. We'd open the door, and everybody would run in like lunatics to grab the best spot for their artwork. It was absolute chaos, but it was fun. It was the early days.
Hi, my name is Nettie Heller. I'm an artist and have been a member of BWAC. Why I was interested in BWAC, I was living in the East Village, Lower East Side, with a lot of artists were in that neighborhood, showing at not-for-profits and galleries. It was what it was at that time. But I came over here because there was an article, a front page of the New York Times. I saw this article and a picture of this park, Fulton Ferry Park, and the sculptures that were in the picture. One was by Deborah Masters, and it was an incredible, figurative, large, monumental work, and I was intrigued. So I came across the bridge, walked across the Brooklyn Bridge to the park. There was BWAC, and I ended up finding you couldn't be a member of BWAC unless you lived on the Brooklyn Waterfront, which consisted of pretty much below the Manhattan Bridge and the Brooklyn Bridge, and that's where artists were that were at the start. I was invited. It was a big building. It was once the Social Security building, and there was this space. They had a lot of empty spaces. That was Dumbo. That was what BWAC ended up doing. They would take empty spaces and recreate they made a museum inside each of these spaces, and these shows went up over like a week or two, and then they had these magnificent works of art, much better than any museum. It was fantastic, and there's a lot of stories, and so we'll sit and we'll raise a glass at the opening on Friday night. Thank you.